So we're back to creating stories for the Journeys of the Dragonborn. Now, this one is pretty much like it's one of those things where it's just very character development sort of thing. There's no combat, there's no urgency. It's the aftermath of what has happened with the Journeys of the Dragonborn and the attack on Morthal and all that sort of stuff. It's just a combination of a lot of character building and a lot of kind of like the aftermath of not just the dragon and saving Morthal, but having the Thalmor there. And we kind of see that not play out so nicely with a certain character who's very protective of someone she loves. And it will obviously play parts in other characters' stories that obviously are affected by the Thalmor and stuff like that. But look, this was honestly just a sort of a breather. I didn't really think I would go out for that long, but there's so many things I wanted to add. I wanted to just tell the stories of all the different characters. Look, end of the day, I'm thinking that maybe these are boring, right? Maybe these are just shit and no one wants to watch them. But at the same time, I don't want to make it like a show where it's like it's told like a show. I don't really want to do that. I just want it to be told like a story. And I've got no experience in this shit. I just do what I think is right, and that's as simply as it is. It's just my story, and people come to enjoy it, and hopefully they feel inspired and able to craft better characters of their own with my own and crap like that. It's as simple as that. It's just my story. I don't see myself as a YouTuber or anything like that. I'm just uploading my stories to YouTube pretty much for people to enjoy. Or hate, depending on who you are. My PR skills are very shit. I am very Australian. I'm very blunt. Now, like I said, there's so much that, that I put into these sort of stories where sometimes it can be boring. I just want to say real quick that the next couple of stories won't be. They're going to change some things up. But let's get into the meatiness and the grindiness of kind of what's going on with all the crap that happened with episode 18, after saving Morthal, surviving the dragon attack, not being able to kill the dragon, clearing out full Gunther, all that crazy stuff. Now, straight after communicating with the Jarl of Morthal, Ragnar goes and talks to, Cecilia, and she takes Valeria with her. Valeria, I keep forgetting her name. Valeria kind of was ordered to stalk Ragnar in a way to help out when it was needed. And there's obviously quite a few people that really don't like her. And you don't blame them, because everyone in Skyrim hates the Thalmor. I mean, even if you role play as the Thalmor, you're going to know they're assholes. You're not playing a necessarily good character. You're going to end up playing a character that's good, but ends up having to leave them because they're like the goddamn Galactic Empire. They're run by assholes. But she pretty much explains that she was sent by the Old Mary Dominion if she was refused the companionship of the Dragonborn, that she was to follow them at a distance, and if something had happened, she'd rock up and help them and slowly earn the trust of the Dragonborn. And that's kind of what's happening here. Ragni's very... I made her to be very naive and hot-headed and impulsive and all that sort of stuff when she started off, and she's kind of learnt a lot of the responsibility on her shoulders, but she's still young. She's still 19, 20. She's very impulsive still and very sort of naive, even though the Thalmor have tried to kill her a few times. She's learnt a lot with seeing her enemies as potential friends, like the vampires, the dragons with Parthenax, and obviously now Valeria with the Thalmor, and especially like Delphine and the Blades that were sworn to protect her that end up betraying her. And there's so many things in Ragni's head that she's learnt that she doesn't try to look at it at face value. She tries to see what it could be instead of what it is. Is joining the Thalmor a good thing, or letting them join you? I personally would say no, because I'm a grown-ass man. I wouldn't let some pointy-eared bastards that tried to kill me a few times follow me around. I'd tell them to fuck off. But the Dragonborn, of course, is a young woman, and she doesn't look at it like I do, or as you would expect a veteran like Cecilia. And obviously Savannah's very pissed at that, because she loves she's over the moon with Ragni, and she's not very happy that she's lied to her, that she's tried to run off on her, and now that she's allowing the Thalmor into her graces, that pisses Serana off. And I've built vampires in my game to be very opposite of what we are. They not just physically as in their pale skin that burns them because they've got no melanin in their skin, and their eyes are nocturnal so they can see better at night and they see shit at day, but their second nature, as their worst impulses become their base nature. you know, and like blood amps them up and heartbeats and all that sort of stuff. It just makes them, it overdrives them to the worst sort of thing. And you know, for someone like Cecilia to walk in the day and hang around lots of living people, it takes an incredible amount of strength. And Serana is a powerful ancient vampire. She doesn't go through all the suckiness that other vampires do, but she's still a vampire, and she can get angry quite quickly and fall prey to her nature as a vampire to want to spill blood, to want to get angry and say some shit. You know, I kind of base it off that Van Helsing show. You know, like the vampires like very demonic, they were very evil, like they would kill and eat babies. But as soon as one of them was cured, he had realised how evil he was. Like it turns your, you know, it's the whole idea of the whole reverse progression of feeding sort of thing. You know, the whole you don't eat, you get stronger. I don't like that. I think it's stupid, but I've changed it in this story, of course. But I like the idea that they're made to be, you know, like they're made to be the worst of humanity, pretty much. And yeah, everything's flipped. The coin turns over when they turn to a vampire. Things like that. Now, again, Ragni isn't completely stupid. She does go, look, you're not in, but it's a good start. And she'll have to keep the Thalmor at bay, and especially with other companions finding out that the Thalmor might be sticking around, or some of them might be following. A lot of them were surprisingly killed in that attack, so Valeria might hang around for a little bit, and there's certainly some things changing going on into the future stories. Obviously, I'm going to tell you right now, there's going to be some spoilers ahead for what I'm working on, because that's kind of what I do with these background videos. I explain the current video, and I kind of talk about where I want to head with the next few stories, or this and that. So I've got 2 stories in my head that I want to play together pretty much. They'll either play back to back, or they'll play at the same time, something like that. But yeah, look, this entire story, like I said, it does feel a little bit boring when I look at it from an outside view, that it's just a lot of character conversations, a lot of checking on everyone, make sure everyone's okay, you know, seeing how everyone is after the whole entire hit shit, the fan, and this and that, and the dead people, and, you know, this, like, you know, it does feel to me that when I look at it from an outside view, it feels like it's just a soap opera, pretty much. But, again, I did make this to be the journeys of the Dragon Ball. Like, you're meant to have the journey with her. She narrates her story, and they all have conversations, and you know, these events mold them and change them, and you know, this is kind of what the whole entire thing's about. I mean, the Contractor's last episode chapter, I was going to time skip. I mean, she was going to go from wearing Dawnguard armor to all of a sudden she's wearing Dragon armor, but when I decided to make the Journeys of the Dragonborn, I really wanted to get in depth with all these characters, not just Ragni, who's the main character, but all the characters that built up the world's, you know, Skyrim story, built up all these other stories. I really wanted them to mold together to become this group, this family, this something, you know, and this is kind of how I do it. You know, I build a lot of these characters and put their conversations together, and their, you know, their relationships and their bonds and all this sort of crap. And it might seem boring. I don't know. I don't know. I'm the one making it. But hopefully, there's people that really enjoy the character, sort of, just the characters blending into one. You know, that's what I really hope people enjoy. Just watching them change and mold and all this over time. Of course, we get to meet the new companion, the new pet of Minerva, who is Carl. And Cecilia, you know, she still hates him. She still wants him dead, but she's not going to openly kill him yet. That could change later on, but maybe not. I don't think Cecilia should unhate the Daedra. I mean, she went through some horrible shit. Hopefully one day I'll be able to tell that story with the Daedra and Cecilia as a younger woman with Sky Oblivion. But I don't think her hatred for the Daedra is ever going to really burn down. I mean, there's certain things she allows because she has to, because of what she is and where she is, you know? Things like that. But again, her hatred for the Daedra, I think, will be a burning thing forever. So she reminds me of my cat, who's probably 20 years old. We found her when she was had a kitten. It was a feral cat that had litters at the pub I was living at as a kid. She's outlasted all my dogs a bitch. And she was a feral, and no, she loves the humans, but it doesn't matter how many dogs there are, no matter if they're pups, if they're old, how old they've been, she does not like them. Even, it doesn't matter. I've had probably 6 or 7 dogs ever since I had that cat, and every last one of them she'll hiss at and strike at if they get too close, because dogs probably attacked her and killed her kittens beforehand, and she hates them. It's very much how I see Cecilia with the Daedra. Now, we go and check on Freya. You know, we get to learn that Freya's kind of, you know, she's badly hurt. She she had an arrowhead stuck inside of her. She transformed a couple of times, which isn't good when you're transforming in and out of a werewolf, because that's making the arrowhead do some serious damage inside of you. Minerva's new spell came in handy that she learnt in the last episode, and basically Minerva's got her asleep with both potions and magic. And I guess the best way to heal in real life is recovery. Oh man, even talking about sleep, I'm going to get tired. So that's kind of how Minerva's, she's keeping her asleep so that her body can, repair itself and heal itself. And she'll use her magic and she'll use potions and she'll let the natural side of being a werewolf and the natural side of being a human sort of just do its business, the best chances they can. And, obviously, Cecilia's very, Cecilia's her mother in a way. She raised her from a 10-year-old girl. She was 17. She basically trained her, She saved her life and kept her under a roof, kept her fed and all this sort of stuff. Blah, blah, And that's my favourite relationship in the entire thing. Like, not Cigars and Centauruses, I like the whole mother and daughter duo sort of thing of a vampire and a werewolf. Especially you have Cecilia as this, anti-Daedra, hating the Daedric princes and character, and that she saves and raises this girl that is in fact a Daedra worshipper of her scene, and it's just a lot of moral smashing of her character, having to bend and all this sort of stuff. I don't know. But Minerva ensures her that she will be safe, that she will be okay. She also informs Ragni that Centaurus is fucked. And I guess I've been saying this for a long time, so everyone knows that he's pretty much fucked on where he's going. There's a reason I keep him the dagger around. You'll be able to experience that later. If you've watched my Elder Scrolls Oblivion streams, you might learn why. It involves a certain hoarded figure. And I've been building my characters for Sky Oblivion, and I've got some cool ideas for that. So if you watch my streams, you might see things like that. I don't know, it's not really important, but there's a cool idea for that later on. This is essentially just the team catching up, making sure Freya's okay and this and that, and Minerva does get into some sort of, I don't know if it's right now or it's a little bit later, but she does get into losing a lot of the people in that fight. A lot of those that died around her. Those that died, she's trying to heal and things like that. And they get into a conversation of Molag Bal. Here, this is going to be important for the future. Because Ragni isn't actively trying to piss him off, but her soul was once his before it was activated by the dragons. She was a vampire. She's hunted and killed his cults. She's pissed him off, no doubt, because of her, her softer, caring, compassionate side, and turning one of his creations into a creature of, that fights for the light and things like that. Like she's turned Serana to fight against her very nature, fight against and kill his cult. But I want to say some things right, real quick. Oblivion questline for Molag Bal, he makes you drop his mace in front of a guy, you keep pissing him off, and the guy will pick up the mace and he'll kill you with it. He makes a good man attack you and kill you. But in Skyrim, he makes the Dragonborn do that. He does the exact same thing in both Daedric quests and both games, but one's done to the player and one's done by the player. And the whole idea with Ragni is that she's got a compassionate soul. And that's one of the things Molag Bal loves. He loves domination, he loves rape, and he loves turning good people into shit people. And Ragni's a really good person. And again, she's a champion of Meridia. She's turned his creation into a creature of the light and sort of thing like that. So, and now she's kind of turning someone into a creature of the night. So these are going to have lasting consequences. And this is for the stories in the future and all that sort of crap like that. And they do discuss that, maybe Molag Bal might have a hard-on for Ragni. And not such a good way. And again, he's a Daedric Prince of Rape. But you don't want to go the hard-on. I can't really say that word, because YouTube cracks the shits. It's, that he might not be the greatest person, that she's probably pissed off in her journeys of the Dragonborn, journeys of her life, sort of thing like that. But, going into the whole Centaurus thing, basically, Ragni has asked her to find Serana after their argument and take her to Solitude and save Centaurus. This is one of the rings of Darius, who is, this is just the armor that I'll make some bullshit up in the future how this all makes sense. Because actually, Rognik is actually wearing a ring of of the Crusader, which was Emil's ring, and then the Crusader had it, and now Rognet has it. All this sort of stuff. There's more character dynamics in the future to follow with all that sort of stuff. But, Serana, bloody hell, Cecilia, says goodbye to a girl, her daughter, and which is her, farewell, and obviously doesn't want to leave her because this is her daughter, and blah, 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 but she has to go and she has to help Centaurus. She did promise to save Centaurus, and they're late. They're meant to be back by the afternoon. This entire thing was meant to be just a simple, walk into the Morthal swamps, find a word of power, and get back. But shit happened. Dragon turned up, undead turned up, the Legion was wiped out, and they got to stay the night to make sure it's all clear and all good. But it's safe now. Well, meant to be. And Serana's had an argument with Ragni with all of their bullshit, and now Cecilia has to leave Freya behind, who's in the good hands of Minerva. The only reason she leaves has to go find Serana and convince her to bloody, go to Solitude, leave Ragni behind, and save Centaurus, because, again, this is meant to be the night, he's going to run out of time, and pretty much does, in a way, almost, close enough anyway. Now, this little section here is pretty, I probably wasted time doing this. It was just making sure, Ragni was just making sure that Minerva's telling the truth, because Cecilia's not here. And she's the last person you want to put, scare or put fear into, because she's a scary bitch. But, Minerva talks about all this sort of stuff, about losing some of the people, that died in the fight, and how she feels guilty for it. And they basically tell her that she's, and Ragni's very, I think Minerva's probably the most perfect one amongst them all. She's very emotionally sensible, she's very powerful, she's very witty and intelligent, and she doesn't cause drama or bullshit with people. She simply just gets up and walks away if they're causing shit, like she did with Tonrak. She doesn't cause drama. She's just very sensible. She's very much the Archmage, she's a leader, she's a good person, and stuff like that. But she's also, a mature person. She is meant to be like an 70, 80-year-old bloody elf or something like that, And she talks about, the guilt of losing people in the fight, and Tonrak basically tells her, mate, you're the best thing, that's happened to us, we would not be the same without you. He shows a bit of a softer side, it's like, I see a lot of myself in Tonrak. We're both natural-born smartasses. And that's probably why people like him, because I put a lot of my own humour into him. And I'm always cracking up when I'm writing his lines and stuff like that. But, he's got a soft side, and that's obviously that soft side is towards Minerva, who is his bedside companion and someone he deeply cares about, and I could even definitely say loves. They love each other, but they're not so romantically lovey-dovey about it. They're just very practical grown-ups in that sort of sense, and this and that. Now, obviously, she's the leader, she's the captain, she's got to piss off and she's got to basically make sure everything's okay, because she's the leader, it's all on her head, and she's got to walk around Morsel, she's got to make sure everyone's safe, everyone's okay, everyone's set up, and make sure the place is safe, because she's, she's really embracing her role as the commander, as the Dragonborn. And Cecilia even mentions this later on, how proud of her that she is of Ragni, because of her leadership skills today was just on point. There was no bullshit. It was protect Morthal, it was save lives, it was that. It wasn't any sort of emotional bullshit that Ragni's normally used to. And this right here was a simple little trick, where Minerva just heals her eye. Because I went through and made all the textures for this, just for Sigan to whack her in the eye and give her a black eye. Not the eye textures, I mean the actual eye texture, not the black eye bit. That's an overlay. But boom, she's no longer got a black eye, sort of thing like that. But this entire thing skips off back into when she leaves here. It goes into Cecilia's story. Cecilia's on the hunt for Serana. She ends up smelling the wrong vampire. Now there is a vampire, we've seen her in the last episode, who is, that's in the Legion, and I definitely want to get into that much later on with certain things. But at the moment, she went the wrong direction, smelling a vampire. I've said this in many different stories, that the rains confuse. I mean, simply and this is going to sound like a very male thing, but when you fart in the shower, it smells just as bad, it smells worse than it should have. Especially in a place like a swamp where it's muddy, it's very damp and cold, and you get the rains coming in, and it confuses all your smells. And Serana caught the wrong scent of the wrong vampire. And then she sees Vina and Vase. Now, I've done a shit story of telling their story, but basically, in the past, Cecilia went on a hunt to kill a Reachman. That Reachman was this girl's mother, Vase, but she found the two girls basically hiding behind her. And with Freya there, she refused to kill their mother because she saw a lot of herself in that. With these, and she realised these weren't her children because one was a Nord, one was an Imperial, and Vase was a Breton. She learnt this woman had adopted these people. Basically, we've seen her stories in the past. Vina here was killed by the Forsworn, or her parents were, and she was going to be sacrificed to the witch, and then obviously that, the witch didn't sacrifice her, she took her in as her own child. The same thing with Veronica, her parents were Reachmen even though they were Nords, but since they were Nords, they were killed by the Forsworn, and Vina took her in, Vase took her in and raised her. And when these guys met, when Cecilia spared Vase, Freya kind of got close with the girls. A little bit too close later on, because that's where we find that she likes ladies, and Vase and her have connected in a very previous early story. When I want to rewrite one day. And of course, help Freya learn more about who she is with the whole, because the Reachmen are very into the old gods, which are the Daedra, like Hircine, especially Freya being a child of Hircine. Got to learn more about herself, even though Cecilia hates the Daedra, but either way, it helped Freya find herself, and Cecilia loves her daughter and that sort of stuff. Whatever. But she's also very regretful that Vase has died here because, again, these girls were raised by her, they were saved by her, and she does look back at that and sees that she was a bit of a cranky bitch towards their mother. But she's obviously deeply sad now they've lost. And I guess going forward, I think Cecilia might even look out for them, be around when they need someone or this and that, kind of sort of like daughters of her own in a way. If the girls need help, she'll be there to help them. If they live through it, sort of thing. We get back into Cecilia, and she sees a bunch of Daedra's bodies, and she's like, oh, great, we lost a lot of the Daedra. That's good. But they but the dragon missed the two that were most important to die, and that was the two Dremora. One being Nox, another one being Cal. And obviously it brings back memories of her in the Oblivion Crisis. And obviously she sees 10 times better at night time that Ragni does when you come to her during the night. But yeah, because you'll see up here on the wall. I mean, it doesn't really take yet, but you see the Nightingale up on the roof, and you see Ragni kind of talking to Stada and Dylora. You see her talking to them because that's what she's in the background doing her own things while these other characters are doing their own shit and stuff like that. But Cecilia's she really brings up the Oblivion Crisis, that the Daedra attacking the town, the dragon attacking the town, really reminded her of the Oblivion Crisis when the Daedra did the exact same thing. And brings her back to memory lane, before eventually she finds Serana sitting off on the dwarf off the side, and stuff like that. She kind of goes back into her memories, talks about sort of her arguments with Darius, the champion of Cyrodiil. How one moment in their bed he's soft and caring and loving, and then when he's got his arm back on, he's just a cold asshole. And a lot of us guys do that, when we're vulnerable, we'll give you everything, but then, once we're not, we're just like, bro, leave us alone. And how pissed off Cecilia, and how she references how young she was as a mortal, that she didn't fully understand. I can't wait to tell her story, man. I really want to get into Scublivion and really tell her story, but that'll take probably a few years to really build all the mods up for that and sort of things. She does reference a previous Chancellor that she had worked with in the Oblivion Crisis that was rumoured to be killed by these new elves. I mean, I think they came in with probably 11 or 12 or maybe... I don't know, but I've lost a lot of those elves. I think I lost 8 of them or whatever. This conversation is quite simple. It's a very female thing. Like they said, don't talk to me about this, and then they talk about it. I don't understand that. I really don't, ladies. If I'm trying to talk about something and you're like, don't talk to me about this, and then I'd say nothing, and then you talk about it. Why? Is it do as I say or do as I don't, but say as I do? I don't get it, man. I don't get it. So I thought I'd take this in here. And, Serana gets pissed about the whole lying sort of thing. Cecilia kind of owns up to it. It's like, I did. Because at the end of the day, I fear you. Because you are an original vampire. You are the most powerful of us. And I know our nature. Because we are reversed when we become vampires. The dark sort of animal we kept locked down as immortals comes out to shine. And blood and everything excites them, and not in a good way. I've never been I've been in a slaughterhouse, and it smells like shit because of all the blood. But I imagine that for a vampire, for human blood, it would smell fragrant. It'd be like walking into a goddamn flower shop for them, it'd smell beautiful. And so, Cecilia kind of opens up about the sort of fear sort of thing. She really talks about herself, and then eventually the whole entire thing is to try and convince her to follow her back to Solitude so they can aid Centaurus, because what's done is done here. And the best way to show that you truly love Ragni is by going to, help Centaurus and that sort of thing to she uses her brain. Cecilia is much younger than Serana in terms of I think Serana was alive for centuries before she went to sleep for 1,000+ years. Probably 2,000+ years. But she's also, I always look at her as the most mature one, the most oldest one out of the two, because she's been on her own for a long time and she's lived through that. She's grown individually, where Serana was kind of, in her time, very much under her mother and her father. She never grew out of being a child under them at all. And even if she was, or somewhat did understand that she was much older than she naturally is, the feelings that she has for Ragni are very new to her. Being in love and being loved, and it's very new to her, so she's very naive to it, because, again, she has no such thing as love to a vampire, especially to her. She was beaten to death and raped by stop using that word, dude. Violated by a Daedric prince, and she's very new to the world in a way, and she's woken up to a brand new world, and she's got brand new feelings, and I always see, she's obviously the oldest out of the two, in both of times of existence and time lived, but I always see her as the younger one. She's always kind of getting a little bit angry, and her powers are going to be a lot better. Her bloodthirst isn't as bad, sunlight isn't as bad, things aren't as shit for her because she's a pure-born vampire, whereas Cecilia, it's probably 3 or 4 times worse for her because she's a turned vampire, 1,000 generations of vampires and shit like that. But she eventually talks to Serana, calms her down a little bit, and was like, let's get out of here so you can get away from Ragni, to have some time to think, and go and save Centaurus. And that is exactly what they do. Now, again, I'm just jumping in between characters in this, trying to get all their sort of points of view, kind of, it's called The Journeys of the Dragonborn, but it's really based on not just her, but all of them. They all built her story. For her to get here, they had to have their stories and sort of things like that. And, like I said beforehand, Ragni is, she's got this strange feeling, this feeling of doom approaching, for good reason. And she wants to make sure everything's safe, everything's okay. She needs to physically see it herself just to make sure, and that the gates are secure, the people are happy, the people are alive and breathing. Nothing is, vulnerable. And obviously, as you see here, it's quite dark. I even put the broadening up a little bit just to make sure the scene was better, because it's, I have a very dark Skyrim as a mortal. And she sees Serana walking off, and she knows where she's going. I think Serana kind of turns her head to look at her, maybe, but she definitely smell her and knows she's there, and she's like, I'll leave it for later. I can't deal with it right now, and make sure everyone's safe, everyone's good, and that sort of shit. But it's obviously deep on her mind. She doesn't exactly know why Serana's kind of losing her shit. She kind of does, but doesn't fully understand it. She is obviously young. She knows that Serana's... Honestly, man, I'm not a woman. And I'm not a lesbian or bisexual or any... I don't know. I just go with what feels right to me. And it might be wrong. I don't know. And then she's kind of wandering around talking about doom approaching, that there's something out there. And then the Nightingale, being the Nightingale, does a sneaky on her. And I thought it was funny. I really did. I was like, that's actually clever. These use a lot of vanilla voice lines in a combination. And she's like, dude, what the fuck? That scared the shit out of me. And she kind of scares the crap out of her. She calls her Topher, out loud in front of people. And then, Nightingale. And then she's like, get off from there before you hurt yourself, sort of thing. And, she's acting a bit like a mother in a sort of way. Where the Nightingale, she's up there. She's always on a sort of high perch looking over the battlefield sort of thing. And she's a bit curious to why the Dragonborn is waltzing around at night time, on her own. And then, Ragni kind of gets emotional about it and tells her that she thinks something's out there, that she needs to check and make sure it's okay. And the Nightingale's straight up. She's just straight to the point. She's like, what? Something's out there and you feel like a doom's approaching and you're going to go out there on your own and find it? You are stupid, my friend. And Ragni's like, bro, that wasn't very nice, that hurt my feelings. And she's like, don't worry about it. I only insult people I like. You know, so I don't know. In a way, I think she's very Australian. Topher. She's very very blunt and down to earth. You know, if she likes you, she's obviously going to pick on you a little bit and tell you the truth. Where if she didn't like her, she wouldn't give a flying shit. She'd just be like, whatever. And she decides to be the friend that she is to the. You know, she deeply cares for Ragni too. I mean, she's learnt to care for Ragni. When I first created her, it was a simple role of that she was only going to join the Dragonborn because the dragons were threats, and the Dragonborn could permanently kill it. And that's the reason she joined her. It wasn't out of the goodness of her heart. It was because this is the one person that could kill dragons, and she needed to see it done so she didn't lose everything she'd created and fought for. But obviously, on the journey of the Dragonborn, people change. Nothing stays the same forever. And that's going to be an important point for the future stories. She follows her around. And we jump back into Tonrak. You know, he's set up his shop. He's like, dude, if I'm going to be watching these guys all night, I'm going to need some piss. And honestly, this was funny for me. I enjoyed making this bit because it's, in a way, very Australian for me. I mean, he likes to drink. He likes mead. You know, like, honestly, I don't mind wine, but I wouldn't be caught dead drinking it from my mates, okay? Because it'd make me feel very feminine. You know, I'm going to go beer 10 times. Like, I'll go Corona any day of the week. And I won't put a lemon or a lime. I'll go fucking raw. Okay? Because I do not want to be seen drinking a fancy wine. Or especially a cider. I don't give a shit if they tasted like heaven. I would not touch a cider. Right? So Tonrak's very much like wines. And again, I mean, I don't mind red wine. It's very sweet. White wine to me is very sour. And I fucking hate it. But if you put a bottle of wine in front of me and a Corona in front of me, I'll drink the Corona. Because that's just me as a dude. And he throws a few things out there. He's like, where's the drink, man? Because this is a goddamn, you know, this is a Nord's longhouse, for crying out loud. And Nords, if you think of a Nord, you think of the people that love to fight. You know, the people that love to drink. Like, where the fuck is it? You know, he's looking around for it. And he also mentions that he wouldn't drink wine unless it was free, unless the world was ending. And of course, both of them are free, and the world is ending. So he's he's like, nah, not even that, man. Not even that. I mean, he's gonna. Honestly, I like Tonrak. He's dude, I hate the Companion's questline. It's so boring. It's so stupid. It makes no sense whatsoever. Within 5 missions, he's the Harbinger. I mean, the very first mission of being the most honourable companions is going to beat some farmer up, which is like the doggest fucking thing ever. Like, with honourable companions, we fight for gold and glory and honour. Oh, your first mission is to go and beat some helpless old farmer up. You pretty much start off as a thug. But you know, Tonrak, I wanted to build him to be a very sterny sort of older bloke. You know, like he's in his 30s. He likes to drink alcohol, likes good company, loves sex, what most men do, and you know, he just loves, you know, good company pretty much. He loves a good drink, and you know, I don't know. I just thought this would be funny because I've got to add some sense of humour. And without sense of humour with Tonrak, it just doesn't make sense. Like, you might as well put a sword through him. And he finds some meat. He's like, thank fuck, bro. Thank God. Because the last thing he wanted to eat, dreading walking up the stairs and having to drink wine, you know? Wine to him isn't, you know, he doesn't like sweet drinks. He doesn't like sour drinks. Good old-fashioned mead. Even if it's a boring mead, it's still mead. And I've said the exact same thing. There's some piss-weak beers in Australia. But if I get like a light beer, unless it's like, you know, no, we don't drink Foster's. Especially we don't drink Bud Light. All that shit went on. If you give me a weak piss over wine, I'll smash the beer, then I'll hit the wine. And then Tonrak being Tonrak, he's a taunter, right? He gets up real close and he stares at the Daedra. And he's like, what the fuck do you want? And Tonrak's like, I like your sword, man. I like it. I'm going to have it one day. And you know, the Daedra being the Daedra, they don't like mortals staring at him, getting too close to him, because they're normally used to killing mortals. And, you know, he basically, and the Daedra's like, you know, he's like, I want your sword. And the Daedra's like, yeah, you can have my sword when I put it through you. And the smile on Tonrak was like, yes, you've bitten my bait. And he's like, I can't wait to see you try one day, man, because I'm going to put that sword through and watch your face turn to fear. You know, he's always pissing someone off, and it's unintentional. It's very much like myself. I cannot help myself, man. I'm like a machine gun when it comes to wit and being a smartass. Someone says something, boom, straight away, I'm off, I'm gone. I've said some shit I shouldn't have said. And then, of course, Nox is like, dude, don't annoy him. You know, we kill things that annoy us, and all you mortals have to do to annoy us is to exist. And, you know, then, you know, obviously, he can't kill him because he's under the control of Minerva. But Nox isn't. I mean, and he goes and walks up to Nox and stares her down and goes, "Oh, I thought you had a thing for me, Nox. I thought you were liking me. You know, I thought there was some things going on." And, you know, Nox could probably just take a weapon and cave your skull in very easily. It might not be much of a fight. But he just goes, "I've already got one demon in my bed," you know, and he just stirs the shit, and I love it. I really do. I mean, he's always poking the bear, you know. The bear sits down, lays down, Tonerak comes up, yanks on the back of his tail. It gets up, it roars. He goes, "Oh, sorry, I'm sorry." Gets back down, yanks the tail again. He's just a shit stirrer, and I love it. But he does get quite serious, and he does show moments of vulnerability or moments of, like, proper care. And this is obviously with Octavia, who is... I made her as a supporting character for Freya, and I did her story a long time ago. I remember someone's comment on that was like, it was very boring until... Oh no, that was different. That was Zarita. Wrong supporting character. But, you know, I really like a story. I mean, I definitely, out of the support characters for Cecilia and Freya, I really enjoyed Octavia because she goes from this farm girl. You know, her story is pretty much her and her mother moved to Skyrim when her father joined the Legion, and they worked in Solitude, and her mother worked at Erica's house as a servant. She was pregnant with her child, and Octavia was 10. Her father went off on a patrol, never came back. Her mother had the baby, and Erica kicked her out of the house because the baby kept screaming and crying, that sort of shit, because he's an asshole. Erica, or what his name is. And they moved to a farm in Whiterun that was owned by an imperial family. And, you know, the Civil War happened, the Battle of Whiterun happened, and after a couple of months they thought it was safe to return. They did, and they came back and they were ambushed by bandits. And Octavia gets into that, she talks about that. And when I was creating a story, the first idea was for her to leave after the healing process of hers was done. She was going to leave and find Freya, but I was like, in my head, I was like, that doesn't make much sense because she's got no skills. So she goes out in the sky and she's just going to get killed again. I was like, how do I make a story of that? And I'm just standing there beside the tree, and I see in the corner of my eye Jorvask, and I was like, holy fuck. I could enhance her story so much better by going into Tonrak's story or going into Yayla's story and giving them some more time to shine. And again, she walks up Jorvaska and she joins the companions, so she has the skills to find a woman that saved her life. And eventually, in the Journeys of the Dragonborn, she finds this. I mean, Freya isn't tagged as an immortal. She can die. And she's still alive to this day, which is quite impressive. And again, she's Freya's supporting character. And this is obviously an important moment for her because when she was found, you know, beaten and molested by a tired bandit clan, it was Freya that saved her life. And Freya was there for her, and she was in her darkest moment, and carried her all the way from like Riverwood to Whiterun to the Temple of Kinnereth. And obviously that changed Octavia's life forever, sort of thing. Inspired her to become stronger and this and that. And now that Freya's immortally wounded, so now Octavia's tend to be there with her throughout the entire journey. Even though Freya's a bit of an animal, you know, like she's like, I like you, I like spending my nights with you, but then goes has sex with random people, random women, and it might really piss Octavia off. But that's the way I built. I built her to be like a wolf. You know, they love a pack. They like, you know, having a big group. And Freya is very much in her nature to never really settle with one, but you know, to play around with multiple people, pretty much. But at the end of the night, I think Freya really enjoys her time with Octavia. At night time, she feels personally close to her. With others, are just there for a bit of fun. But yeah, it's really, you know, Octavia kind of really gets into her past, and that she's never going to be that weak girl ever again. That she joined the companions to find Freya, to become a warrior of her own, and this is pretty much what this little story is. It's her growth, and Tonrak's like, yeah, man, that's why I took you in, because there was a fire in your eyes. And I really like that story. It's a time for Tonrak to kind of be a bit compromising and things like that. She also then asks the question, is like, you know, I joined the companions to find a woman that saved my life because I wanted to join her, I wanted to follow her, I wanted to be her. And she's like, what if I leave? And Tonrak's like, dude, that's more than fine, but why do that? I mean, the companions of old were the 500 companions of Ysgramor, and their line kept on until eventually Skyrim. But the companions have a new journey, a new goal. And that's to be the 200, the 300, the 400, the 500 companions of the Dragonborn. So anyone that fights with Tonrak is considered a companion to him. So, even like after all this is done, pretty much anyone that fought the Dragonborn is a companion to him. the Jorvask can be their home. They can work with the companions. They're a different group now. They're not just the companions of old like they are in Skyrim, but they're enhanced with the story going forward. They are now the companions of the Dragonborn, as in the old were the companions of Ysgramor, and they just took the name and kept it for as mercenaries. But now they're changed. They're not just mercenaries anymore. They're the two. I think there's like 190 of them. I think at the moment, like the 198 companions of the Dragonborn, plus the legionaries and the Stormcloaks and all that sort of crap. So he's like, you can follow her if you want, but you guys are still going to be companions. Now we get back to yeah, you know who you are. My German friend. I didn't even realise it, but I gave him blue eyes and blonde hair. I think. One of my subscribers created this character, and so I decided to run with it. And he's guarded. He's at the gate with a vampire who can see better and smell better at night time, sort of thing. I mean, this will be explored much later on. Probably not even in the Journeys of the Dragonborn. It's pretty much just Ragni, in the background where everyone's having their stories and they're dealing with the current matters. She's just doing what she set out to do, to check out Morthal, to make sure it's safe, because she's got this looming dark feeling hanging over the top of her, and she's worried about it. So she just needs to waltz around, check things out, while other characters get into their stories. But now it's kind of time for her. Now, again, I have a lot of things where, like, a lot of random characters just join the Dragonborn's team. It's either on the road, it's either things like Morthal, because these two characters were actually in Morthal. Well, I think one of them was, and the one we get to meet in the jail, in the fire. She was just here when I started the scene for the dragon fight. And it's cool, because these guys travel around Skyrim going to the towns, villages, and stuff like that. That's the way I built them, with their AI. Their AI packaging. And I think, I forgot her name, the one wearing the Draga armor. She was here in Morthal. I mean, it's perfect, because, it's sandbox. It's what I want the story to be. I want the story of the Journeys of the Dragonborn to be very sandbox. Characters live and die, kind of story writes itself. And in this aspect that she rocks up and she turns up in Morthal during a certain event, and this is how she joins the Dragonborn's team. And how long does she live for? Does she die? Does she live? I don't really know. But, again, I like the whole sandbox nature of it. She's checked the place out. She's made sure it's all safe. She feels comfortable that it's all safe. Quite a few of the companions are gone to sleep. Quite a few of them are up at the fire. And when we first showed her here, what was her name? Julia was awake. She's sitting in the corner. But when we get in there, she's asleep. And, this and that. So, there was the older bird, the older sort of mage I really wanted. I keep putting her in scenes, but I keep forgetting that I haven't got a voice in the Levens Labs yet. So I got to do that. But we get into this sort of thing, and we get to talk to the wood elf that recently joined up, and she complains about how goddamn cold it is. She's like, dude, what the fuck? Why are there blizzards in summer? Which, the whole thing's like, the Nord starts laughing at her. She's like, welcome to Skyrim. And this is the one right here who was in town. Has the same sort of ancient Nord sword that, forgot her name, the Breachman woman has. And this sort of stuff. And again, she's just a Nord traveller exploring Skyrim, exploring her homeland, going deep into ancient ruins, and your typical adventurer that has found pieces of armour and put it on herself in a rather revealing way. Thank you, Modest. And she's like, hey, on Dragonborn, I was just staying here the night. I had all my stuff in the inn. It burnt down. Shit happens. And then obviously Rognik's like, you got to be careful, man, because we could have probably attacked and killed you thinking that you were Draga. And she took offense to that, because she's like, dude, fuck you. I mean, take a look at me. Obviously, I don't look like a Draga. I don't smell like a Draga. And she thinks that he's calling her ugly or some sort of shit because she's got like a big jaw or something. He didn't mean it like that. He's just being very observant of that. In the heat of battle, he could have turned around, seen that armor, and struck her down because the Draga are wearing the exact same armor. But obviously, they don't look like her at all, or smell like her. But I don't know. I thought it'd just be a little bit of a thing that she's like, dude, fuck you. I don't look anything like a Draga, or smell anything like a Draga. A little bit of comedy right there. We do get into a conversation where basically we find out that Julia did not get any healing from Minerva. She refused it because there was others that needed it more. And Julia's kind of on a path to die. She's mentioned this quite a few times, that she wants to die in battle. And we get a bit more of her story beforehand. This is the first time you get to learn a bit more about her. That during the Great War, she was when it started, she was pregnant, and then as soon as she had a kid and she was able to go into war, she did. And she did some heroic shit. She inspired a lot of men to fight. Like when they were cowering, she would charge them in line, inspiring them. But She finds out that her mother, her father, her siblings, her child, her husband were all killed by the general, Thalmor General Lord Narif in the sacrifice ritual sort of thing. And it broke the shit out of her. And, she only came back to Skyrim when there was a war happening because it was in hopes of her dying. And, she's a soldier through and through. She's killed. She's seen death. This is how she feels alive. And this is how she wants to die. Doing what she is, I guess you could say. Ragnik kind of mentions that her humour was still somewhat intact, with the whole trying to seduce him into her bed. He's married. We get to Vitalia, and she opens up and she talks about why she followed, and very much she's following a similar path to Julia after the death of her daughter, the dragons, and that have become her ultimate enemy. And, the whole curse of, they're dead and they're gone, but you see them everywhere you go. They follow you. And that's the only reason Vitalia followed, is because the Draga killed her daughter and the dragons killed her daughter. And this is what she wants to do. She wants to kill the dragons, and then hopefully one of them kills her and sends her to her daughter. And obviously Ragnik's young and doesn't really fully understand that. She's lost her entire family. Her sister, her mother, her father. She understands what it's like losing a family, but not losing a child. She hasn't suffered that greatly yet. Quotation marks. For the future. And that sort of thing. So, again, it's just a lot of character blending. I kind of want her, and I do want to see a lot more stories in between, either with Journeys of the Dragonborn or Dragon Hunters or other characters exploring who they are, what they do, that sort of thing. If it's boring, people obviously won't watch it, but if I think it's something fun to learn about the story and the characters, I'll do it, simply. But anyway, Ragnar goes to sleep. I thought I was actually going to leave it here, but I thought it would be better to continue it with a bit more, the characters that aren't here. I mean, there's plenty of aftermath, and it's not just for those that followed her into Morthal. It's very much the raw actions of a certain character that didn't follow her into Morthal that, is suffering the aftermath of her actions. Honestly, man, I really like doing this entire nighttime sequence because, you don't really get to see much of it in the Journeys of the Dragonborn, especially when it's storming. It's very beautiful in a way. I mean, and you get to see the perspective as a vampire during the night with Cecilia, and also the perspective of the mortals during the night as, Sigurd and the others walking around the town and stuff like that. So we visit Sigurd, who's decided that, honestly, in the last episode, the last two episodes, she punched Ragni in the face because Ragni didn't tell her of Centaurus' plan, and she felt betrayed and angered. I built Sigurd to be very, strong and firm during the Great War, that she was the strong sister out of her and her twin Brianna. But ever since everything's changed, ever since her sister died, and then her sister came back, and then she's with the Journeys of the Dragonborn, she's fell in love with her enemy, just her entire shit's just collapsed. Her entire mental structure that she built to make herself strong just folded. And she's been making a mess out of herself of late because of it all. So she punched the Dragonborn and refused to follow her because she thought it was just going to be another boring day. She walks into this ruin, learns the word of power, and comes back, and she wasn't going to follow that day to teach her a lesson, not to betray her and stuff like that. And she doesn't come back, and she's worried, and she's obviously reeling from, the guilt of what she's done with both Ragni and Centaurus cracking the shits at him and leaving him sort of in a lot of pain. And she's written a letter, and she's going to take it in, to see if Ragni's there and is ignoring her maybe. And, bloody... what was it? Basically, leave a letter for Ragni, apologising for her actions in case Ragni doesn't want to see her anymore, because punching someone you deeply care about in the face is quite rude. It's a pretty big betrayal because they're pretty much, it's like a sisterhood with Sigurd and Ragni. Ragni was the older sister, but she sees Sigurd as the older sister. Now this is kind of I don't want to give it away. I really don't want to give it away. Honestly, this is the stuff that's going to be heading into the future stories, the two stories that I'm doing, lining up for that. And like I said, I don't want to give it away, so I'll just let this, your brains, your eyes, and that you'll figure it out yourselves, pretty much. I gave more than enough hints of what's going on here, what's leading on into it. So I'm gonna. I love to spoil things. I do, but sometimes it's just better to watch it play out. Especially if you enjoy watching these sort of things, what I do here and explaining about the story and the characters and where I'm going with it. But again, right here, you kind of will tell where the story is going, and if you've lined up the dates. If you've been a fan of my stuff for a while, like 9 months ago, I told a story of a certain individual, and then I made Journeys of the Dragonborn right after it. But returning to that story, and writing it proper this time. Now, with the modern times of the Journeys of the Dragonborn, we now have to rewrite that story because it makes no sense, the old one, and tell it again. It's going to be bigger, it's going to be better. Well, it's going to be bigger, it's going to be a lot worse going into it. A lot worse. Yeah, she finds out that Ragni hasn't returned to... Oh, she's not here yet. And so she simply just goes to place in the letter. I mean, it's as simple as that. And then after she's done that, she now has to go and deal with the aftermath of Centaurus. Because when she left him in a very bad situation, you know. Yelled at him, screamed at him, told him to fuck up, that she wants nothing to do with him anymore. I mean, like I said, I built Sigan to be very raw in sort of her emotions. You know, like I said, she was very firm and tough during the Civil War with her sister. But ever since, you know, she lost her sister and her sister came back, and then she didn't follow her sister back, she followed the Dragonborn, sister doesn't reply to her messages, she's fallen in love with her enemy, and all this sort of shit. It's blown up in her head, man. It's taken down her foundation, and she's made a mess of herself because of it. And now she's dealing with the aftermath of that, and heading on her way to see Centaurus. Honestly, the walk through Solitude in the Nighttime is very beautiful. I mean, it really is. It's actually quite gorgeous. And like I said, I like showing off the perspective of the night. I don't think I've really shown it off that much when it comes down to it in the story. It's more of a daytime thing, and that's kind of how it should be. I mean, as a mortal, you know, as a human being or an elf or whatever the hell you are, you're going to be awake during the day doing daytime shit. During the night, you're obviously going to be asleep. So that's kind of the whole idea of the Journeys of the Dragonborn. The poor vampires have to do the whole reverse of what they are, and sleep during the night and be awake during the day, sort of thing. But yes, this is kind of the aftermath of Sigurd. Now she comes into the home and she finds Zarita, who she knows is obviously Cecilia's vampire, and she's like, fucking, these guys are watching over and trying to turn him into a parasite. She's not happy about the idea of the man she's fallen in love with turning into a vampire. Because vampires are inherently evil. To everyone's stories and views like that. And, you know, Sigurd being the emotional individual she is, she's told that she shouldn't be here because what's going to happen to Centaurus isn't safe for anybody to be around. And Sigurd cracks the shit straight away. But then she realises she's cracked the shits and apologises. You know, because she's very impulsive when it comes to her emotions and stuff like that. And, yeah, look, she has a rather civil conversation with Sarita. Sarita explains that, you know, that... like Cecilia and that aren't back yet, and it's really close, and you know, he's coming really close to needing to be turned, and she talks about the blood, or talks about turning him, and Zarita explains why she can't turn him. Now, I think this is actually a game thing, because if you get attacked by a vampire, right, you get infected, and you turn within 3 days. But if Harkon bites you, if Serana bites you, you turn instantly. Because they're, well, not too sure Harkon's a pureborn, but he's a vampire lord, and powerful bloodstream and first or second generation vampires of their line, so they can probably turn you instantly. The only thing that can save Centaurus would be an instant bite from a pureborn vampire or a vampire lord, something like that, you know. And so Zarita or Cecilia couldn't turn him because he wouldn't survive the transformation. 3 days is required for them to turn into vampires. He'd simply die before it even takes place. It'd probably just speed up his death. And she explains that she is just like Cecilia, that she will not turn anybody into a vampire. And she does bring up the blood sort of thing. But we're going to get a little bit forward ahead here and get into, you know, the aftermath of these two characters. Now, obviously the AI will only take notice of certain voices, and as you can hear here, Centaurus' voice changes. Obviously, he's dying. He's hours, you know, less than half a day away from falling prey to the dagger's curse. And he's going to sound like he's dead. So, I can't get the AI to feel these emotions. It's an AI. So I decided to use my brain and actually take the voice files of the wounded lines, you know, for the Civil War, and use that in the AI. So I had to make a brand new voice of Centaurus, one of the wounded voices, to make it sound like he was actually like raving, like he was actually dying, like his voice was hurt and stuff like that. And this is why his voice changes, because I wanted him to sound like he was actually fucking dying. Yeah, there's no point Centaurus being hours away from death and be like, yeah, it's you, rightio. I really needed him to sound like he was dying. Like, talking was really tough and hurt in his voice. Things like that. You know? And he gets up and you can hear the pain, like when he's moving. You know, and I thought it was a pretty cool idea. I didn't even consciously do that until I realised, like, that would actually hurt getting up, being that sick and sore. Um, so, again, and I also did the same thing with Sigun. I mean, she's coming to realizations of what she's done and what's going to happen and what has to happen, that she has to support this because she doesn't want him to die. And she's going to be in an emotional state, especially when she spots him, because she hasn't seen what he looks like yet. And Centaurus kind of, he looks at the photo of, happier times. He coughs his guts up, gets all the phlegms out, and his voice kind of slightly changes again. But you can hear that, it's a struggle for this poor bastard. You can hear his heartbeat. He's got his health bars, his stamina bars going, his magic bars going. He doesn't know any magic. And his health bar's running out. I mean, it's a ticking time bomb. And he sounds like he's going to die. And I'm glad that I actually decided to do that, because I did these lines with Centaurus' ordinary voice. It just didn't feel right until I, like I said, used my brain and actually used the wounded files in the game to actually clone and make it so he was dying. And then that brought on another idea with Sigun's voice, as you'll hear a little bit further on, how she does sound different. Her voice sounds a lot more raw and a lot more emotional. So I did the exact same thing with that. I just found sad voice lines for the female Nord, clone those, and use that in the story. And again, had Sigun sound a lot more emotional than she naturally would. I'll give it to you. AI, they do have a V3 model, but it's very alpha, and it does do emotions and stuff like that. But it's like I said, it's very alpha, very bare minimal. It doesn't work, and the voices that I have for Skyrim's stories do not work with it at all. They sound nothing alike. But again, I used my brain and figured out that I should just take the files of the sad, or the wounded, or the angry, and use those for the future. But yeah, I mean, like I said, Sigun has not seen Centaurus ever since the night she spent with him, where he looked somewhat alive. He was a bit pale, but she turns around and pretty much shoots a brick when she realises what he looks like. That he's just... He's in the shadow, of course, but she can see how pale he is. That his eyes are blood red. And she just goes to grab him by the head, and she apologises for what she said and did, and that she blames herself for bringing that dagger close to him, and she just falls prey to emotions. She obviously loves Centaurus very greatly and that sort of stuff. And she has a moment where she gives into her emotions around the man she loves. And Centaurus being him, he loves her too. He's happy to see her again. Doesn't want her being sad, and he explains that it's not her fault. That he's alive because of her, because he was put to his knees from that dagger, and he could have had his throat slit or stabbed again, and Sigun saved his life. And Sigun kind of talks about how she beat Cecilia here, that she refused to follow Ragni, that she abandoned her, that she punched her, and that does kind of piss off Centaurus, because again, his ultimate loyalty is to Ragni. I mean, he's turning into a vampire because he doesn't want to die, but also because he doesn't want to go and leave the Dragonborn behind. He ultimately loves Ragni very much. And that sort of thing. I mean, that's the reason why they're both there. It's the reason why he also fell in love with Sigun, because her loyalty was to Ragni too, was just as strong as his. And when he finds out that she's abandoned her and that she's hurt her, you can see his face kind of curls and he gets angry. He raises his voice almost like he's about to throw a hand at her. It's the first time he's actively been angry at Sigund, and he gets into kind of this angry thing and really riles up his emotions. And he starts to pay for that, like he did beforehand. He kind of calms himself down somewhat because he's choking on his blood and that, and then eventually it all catches up to him and he's put on the floor because, Zarita said, do not work him up. And Sigun worked him up, and he hit the floor, and that sort of thing. Zarita pretty much comes over and says, look, the time is near. You need to go. I did hear that you punched Ragni in the face, and Serana's a vampire. I'm a vampire. I know how we feel. I know how protective we get over the things we love, and that our second nature becomes our first nature, like I said, and, if she sees you and she knows what you've done, she's going to really badly hurt you and probably kill you. And Centaurus is like, she's right, you need to go. You cannot see what's about to happen to me. You cannot be around me for what's about to happen to me. And you can't be here if Serana gets here, because, he can't do anything about it. And he basically goes, look, save her, protect her, find her, be with her, that sort of thing. That's what he wants Sigun to do. He's basically telling her to protect Ragni. To keep by her side until he returns. And she goes, yep, yep, I've messed up too many times. So hopefully for Sigurd here, this is her really wake-up moment to stop falling prey to her emotions and realise what she's here for, who she's here for, and why she's here, and all that sort of stuff. This might be the wake-up call for Sigurd to really realise how much of a dickhead she is, and to return to her original path as being her, the shoulder companion of Ragni, and be the big sister that Ragni needs. I mean, she's a powerful dragonborn. She's not an all-powerful dragonborn yet. She can fight kill dragons, but still, there are people that make her feel safe and protected, and Sigurd's one of them. That sort of thing. So that's kind of what I really wanted to do with this. And I was actually going to end the story here, because I was going to end the story with Sigurd riding a horse past Serana and Cecilia. Pardon myself. And then have it end there. But I kind of really wanted to keep into the aftermath of Serana, because she is an important character of the journeys of the Dragonborn. Of course, she is the bedside companion, the lover, the wife of the Dragonborn herself. So it was good for her to catch up the aftermath of all the shit going on. Now, Serana gets in here and she realises that there's a bit of an odd smell, a bit of an odd presence. She doesn't understand it. She blames it on the rain because it confuses all their senses and stuff like that. Holy moly, I've been here for like 2 hours. Holy shit. And that sort of thing, right? So, man, I was meant to be in bed like an hour ago. Shit. Anyway, she realises there's something odd about this place and doesn't exactly know what it is. And she's simply here to destroy the blood that she made for Centaurus. Because Cecilia's like, dude, you gotta destroy that shit. It's very dangerous. I mean, that can turn someone into a pureborn vampire, a vampire lord, instantly. That's some very dangerous shit. And so she's going to do that before she goes to Centaurus. Well, Cecilia's gone to the Legion to tell them about Morthal, and obviously to get a prisoner from, like a piece of shit that needs to die, for what's about to happen with Centaurus. And she notices the cupboard's been opened. Again, there was a conversation between Zarita and Sigurd about the blood helping Centaurus, and it very well could be that Zarita maybe grabbed it. Very well could be that, very well could be. Things like that. But we'll find out in the future stories, of course. She realises that, the blood's not here, so maybe Zarita's got it. And she's like, alright, well, Zarita's used it, or she's going to use it. I better get back to Centaurus' place. If they're not there, then I go to where Cecilia said it was going to happen, and that could be in the temple. So that's kind of where the story ends for now. It will lead into 2 more stories going into the future that will probably play back to back. With Skyrim's greatest antagonist Skyrim's greatest protagonist and Skyrim's greatest antagonist. But I hope you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you guys in another video. But other than that, I hope you guys have enjoyed this little background information. I've spent way too long doing this. And I hope you guys enjoy the stories to come, because the stories to come will change shit forever. If you become comfortable with the companions and all that sort of stuff, it's going to roll things up. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed. I'm going to catch you later and have a good one.